Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Smart Money. Now, the AI space has taken the world by storm in the last few months. In fact, the big headline this week was Accenture investing $3 billion in artificial intelligence over the next 3 years in both its data and AI practice, thereby adding 40,000 jobs. Now, in this week's edition of Smart Money, we do a deep dive into the generative AI mega trend. How could it transform industries, companies, and transform the way we live? My guest on the show today is Varun Mayya. He's the founder and CEO of companies Avi and Scenes. Varun is also a self-proclaimed tech geek, has been writing code for 17 years and creates content about AI on social media. Varun, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it. First, tell me, it's a very scary and exciting time to be alive, perhaps because of this whole AI mega trend. But for the uninformed, people who've perhaps not jumped onto the bandwagon just yet, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I think, look, AI has been a buzzword for a very long time, and people have been making many of these AI models for a very long time. But what broke it into, I would say, mainstreamness was this tool called ChatGPT that came out and allowed anybody, people like you and me, to be able to prompt it and then output very human-like readable text. I think that's what started the wave, and then a lot of other tools came out. So everything you see in content, right? Text, audio, video, we started being able to replicate the parts of humanity that we thought were special to us. So we thought our creativity was special, our artistic sense was special, our sense of the way we write poetry was special. And then one by one, we got knocked off our perch little by little by little. And I think that's why it's creating so much furor out there. Because I think the one part that made humans very special, or believe we are special for a very long time, has now been superseded, or rather has competition from something brand new.
But am I going to lose my job, Varun? I mean, are anchors going to be replaced with an AI-generated version? Because there's now text-to-speech as well, right? I mean, they don't need us anymore.
Yeah, two ways to look at it, right? The way to look at it is, let's say you were on YouTube and you had a very tiny channel, let's say 100 people, 200 people. Then you could use an AI to kind of, replace yourself. But at your scale, for the reputation you have, it would be very hard for an AI to capture all the nuance of what you do on a daily basis right now. 5 years later, nobody knows, right? And I'd be lying in public if I said, I know what's going to happen 5 years later. I have a general idea, but you know what? The last 1 year has proven me wrong. My timelines were much longer. I said, well, 2030, I'd written a book in, I think, 2017 called Pajama Profit, where the last chapter was one day AI is going to take your job. It was supposed to be clickbaity to a certain extent, but what ended up happening was my timeline there was 2030. And look at us now, we're in 2023. So I don't know. I think nobody can predict the future. We all know that it's going to happen at some point, like 100,000 years in the future, 1,000,000 years in the future. At some point, it's going to happen. But it's almost like those timelines have shrunk to the next 3-4 years. To answer your question of will you have your job, unlikely for you to lose your job. You're at scale, you're at a reputation that's hard to be, dethroned.
Okay. It made me feel better about my job. But, I'm sure that's the question that millions of people who are watching have, right? What about economy in the age of AI? What's the impact that all of this would have on, say, the wealth gap, right? And how does this tie in with the universal basic income?
Yeah, so there's this saying in software, right, that the marginal cost of production is very low with software, right? So let's say I produce 1 unit of the software, it's going to cost me X. But the minute I want to make a copy of that, let's say I want to make 100,000 copies of that, I can do it at near zero. It's not actually zero, it's a little more than zero. That was the advantage of software. And we saw this advantage being played out in the last 30 years. Actually, a little lesser than that, but let's take 30 years, as a timeline. Before that, what did humans do? We had jobs, we had the concept of jobs, but all of them were offline. We had very little of this, we'll do this online, we'll send an email online. So I feel like the offline world is going nowhere. It's only going to be supplemented by the online world. In fact, even in India, right, if you zoom out and look at it, apart from like some clusters, like let's say edtech, gaming, few others, it's actually very hard to make money online. And a lot of people have figured out that, the next door guy selling cakes or bed sheets is probably making more money than, most startup founders, right? So I think offline is here to stay. Online is a great advertising and distribution platform. You want to attract potential customers to come buy the sporting equipment that you're selling. Online is a great place to do that. I feel like there is where AI will sort of make the people with a good brand become even better, right? Someone famous once told me this, right? India is an underbranded nation. We don't have enough brands. And AI actually allows you to make like the whole hog, right? Because everything that AI is coming after right now can be described as content, except maybe code and a few other segments. You look at text, you look at video, you look at images, you look at audio, it's all content. And all of that content put together allows you to build a brand. A lot of people had to hire other people to make this happen for them. But today you have a bunch of tools that make your life easier.
And
so
we're going to talk a little more about those tools, right? Because I do want you to help us with, understand, with some live sort of examples as well. Everyone knows about ChatGPT, so I'm going to leave that aside. But there are several other generative AI tools which are sort of taking the world by storm. There's Midjourney, there's 11 Labs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, I actually tried Midjourney many years ago. Right, when it first launched, I think this was a couple of years ago. I think this was last year, if I'm not wrong, when I first tried it. And it wasn't that great. And I was like, I'll give this a pass for now. I'll come back when it's better. Today, it's like really good. Right? And I think a few weeks ago, we all got back on Midjourney subscription. It was like really, really, really good. So a lot of people, especially, and we see this on Twitter, right? Twitter is slightly ahead of the curve. So they're kind of used to what kind of outputs Midjourney puts out now. But if I go to the average person who hasn't used Midjourney, which by the way is most of India's population, and I show them a Midjourney output, their mind is blown for a second. They're like, how is this doing this?
Show us a demo. How does it look? What do you use it for? And I mean, just, one glimpse for our viewers.
Sure. So let's bring up Midjourney on screen, guys. Awesome. So that's Midjourney on screen. And we're just going to quickly prompt for a Disney Pixar-like image. A Disney Pixar-like image of a wrestler, of a sumo wrestler, let's say.
Okay.
That's it. It's just one line. Let's hit the enter button. So it'll take a few seconds. And you can see it sort of, the image being birthed in real time, right? It's magical to look at.
So basically, you can create any type of image in a really short period of time, and the person can be anywhere in any avatar, so to speak, right?
Yes. So you can imagine anything. In fact, the keyword to prompt Midjourney into action is imagine, right? You are now limited by what's going on in your head. In fact, my friend keeps saying this, right? He keeps saying that the last generation rewarded people's skills. Today, this generation rewards people's taste. So it's sort of like if you have great taste, using these tools allows you to, kind of put out exceptional sort of images, videos, text, all of that fun stuff.
Okay.
Let's bring up one of those images on screen, please.
Oh, that looks pretty cool, actually. You did this in less than, what, two seconds? I mean, you need to know what the right prompt is, right?
Yeah. So let's try another one. Let's try a Japanese woman in a kimono standing on top of a mountain.
So Midjourney is not used for face swapping. It is largely just a creative tool.
Image generation. Yes. I mean, there are interesting bots on Midjourney that allow you to do things like face swapping. There are also dedicated tools for that. Hopefully, we'll show you one right after this.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm looking forward to that, actually.
Yeah, this is the sumo wrestler, I think, from the last image, from the last generation.
So what is Midjourney, like from an economic sense, right? What all are the jobs that you can create for yourself? Or how can you upskill yourself using some of these AI tools?
Sure. So I think if you're an artist, Midjourney is great. Like, for example, illustration. Midjourney is great to do things like illustration, right? You want to do logos. It isn't the best logo maker, but there are some styles of logos it's good with. I'll tell you where Midjourney struggles with. I think a lot of artists have been worried about Midjourney, and we've been working so often with image generation tools in general that we've sort of figured out where the gap is. If you ask Midjourney to generate, let's say, an image of a coffee cup on a table, right, with some nice logo or branding on one side, it'll do a great job. Now, if you take that same image, and you can do stuff in Midjourney where you feed in an image and get more results. If I feed in that image and I say, this is the style of the coffee cup, now make me a coffee book table, make me, a tote bag. If you ask for that, you'll immediately realize that Midjourney is now generating other really cool images, but there's no consistency between that image and this one, right? So for now, I think as a designer, if you're going and doing one-off things, right? If you're making one-off images for clients, you're in a little bit of trouble. But if you're responsible for making the entire branding, I got to do this and this and this and this and this, In fact, it makes the communication between you and the potential customer or client much easier. A, because the client can see immediately what he or she wants. You sort of can throw them the entire mood board and they can decide what they want. And then you build the entire brand assets around that.
Wow.
Right? So I feel like that's a very big opportunity for designers. It's making them faster. And it's possible now. In fact, people keep saying this on the internet. I think it's kind of true, right? A person with AI will beat a person without AI. So essentially what's happening is if you have the ability to use these tools, you are now able to take up more projects, right? Let's say if you were able to take up 2 projects a week, right?
In lesser time,
yeah,
right?
Much lesser time.
Much lesser time. And this is, by the way, this is beautiful. Look at what he's generated, right? In what, less than a minute. This is a stunning picture. I don't think even if you were trying to make this picture on your own using Photoshop or even using just, your creativity, it wouldn't come out like this. All right, on that note, let's take a very quick commercial break, but we will continue this extremely interesting discussion on all things AI on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Smart Money on CNBC-TV18. I'm still in conversation with Varun Mayya, the founder and CEO of companies Avian Scenes, and we're here to talk about the mega trend, which is artificial intelligence. You were telling me, Varun, about a demo of another sort of software that you can use as a face swap. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's a tool that we launched, in fact. It's sort of a fine-tuned model. And we sort of said, well, Midjourney is great, but what if you could be there? And now you have to use these hacky bots to do the same thing on Midjourney, which complicates the process for most people. So we built a tool called Alpha CTR. It's called, the URL is alphactr.com, where again, great outputs with a simple prompt. So let's just show you an example of you, Sonia, in the scene. Right? We just prompted for Sonia in a nice fancy little studio.
Oh, wow.
And as you can see, this is one output. Let's show some others.
I look pretty cool. Oh, that's nice. And this you generated in how long? In what, seconds?
Few seconds. Right? So all you have to do is go to the wizard, and I could quickly go to the wizard and just ask for anything. I could say Sonia as Supergirl, right? So essentially it allows you to live out your dreams of being whoever, wherever, and with high resolution. In fact, this is silly, but I know that a lot of people in my circle travel just to take pictures. They travel just to get that one Instagram selfie standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, right? Now it's sort of it's
you don't need to do that.
Yeah, it's too convenient.
But okay, I have a question here. The first question I was asking you, right, whether my job would be taken. Now you've generated this, and you can use 11 Labs to do text-to-speech, right, and sort of record my voice and put it on there. Do you even need people anymore? Do you need human form anymore if you have all of this to kind of... I understand this whole thing about, you need somebody to do the thinking. So that's like a couple of people here and there. But in general, do you need, sort of, what do you call them, expensive assets? You can just work with all of this, right?
Yeah, but think about offline, right? Like, for example, let's say you have to do an interview with, let's say, a celebrity or a politician, right? You can't send an AI to go do that. Because actually, if you really think about it, the best use case of the internet, at least in this era, is to get visibility on something, right? There are very few internet businesses by themselves that make a lot of money, right? It's a fraction of what makes India money. So I feel like if you had to interview someone, you can't send one of these things to interview someone, right? You'd have to embody an AI inside a human-like figure, right? And I know Elon Musk's working on something like this. It's called the Optimus robot, where there's an embodied form, but people can call it out, right? And just be like, that's not human. So I feel like the relationships you build, the networks you've built over the last, few years, the reputation you've built, that is powerful. Like I keep saying this, I keep pointing out to this nuance in the content creator world, for example, right? Content creation will get easier and easier to do. Eventually, like next year, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to create content, right? It's going to be a version of me that's creating content. We've already experimented with a few of those videos. I don't even know if my audience can tell. But my channel and the value of the channel and the trust that channel is built, the audience that channel is built, even if I swap myself out, that trust is going to continue to increase. Right? As long as the
Also,
content's
Varun,
good.
I mean, you can replace your face, you can replace your voice, you can't replace your brain, right? At the end of the day, that's
Yeah,
you.
I'll still have to be
I hope
powering
not.
it.
I hope not. There doesn't come a time when my brain will be replaced. But okay, tell me, since, you know, we're just getting it back to how you can sort of generate an income using this and all of that, what are the kind of timelines we're looking at? I'm going to ask you to do one more demo of 11 Labs because that's very interesting for me. But in a bit, before that, how long do you think it would take until AI and AR shape our lives completely?
Yeah, so let's take AI first, right? I think it's already shaping our lives to a certain extent. And mainly because actually a lot of our lives is dependent on Google, Apple, Facebook, all the other platforms. I'm only talking about the digital world for a second, right? And Google's already kind of shifted its entire company to be an AI company. They were already an AI company, but now they're like going hard, right? Like if you've seen their last sort of Google event, it was the theme was AI, generative AI. So I think Google's going hard, and that's going to have impacts on us because all of these tools that we use, even Google search, they've been demoing a new sort of Google search where all of the articles, the SEO junk that's on the internet just gets wiped out, and it's just like there's an above the fold and below the fold. And if you make it above the fold, you become a massive business. If you make it below the fold, nobody cares about you. So I think it's going to affect a lot of our businesses, from a distribution perspective, right? I think it's also going to affect a lot of the content we consume because most of us, believe it or not, are just sitting on YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels and just scrolling. A lot of that is going to be AI generated, right, in a year or 2 years. So a lot of what we consume, a lot of what goes in our head is going to be that. Then it's going to influence, for example, the jobs that we have, right? If I am an employer, and believe it or not, but most employers, at least on the design front or even let's say on the code front, right? They're not, some companies do, but most companies are not shipping, excellent top 1% work, right? They're getting by. And I feel like AI there to an employer, like this is $5 a month. Like I think Alpha CTR is like $5 a month. This one is a human being is like 30,000 a month. It kind of, it's like a cognitively like what do you do, right? But I do feel like eventually every business is going to have one person that uses all of these tools in every department. So in marketing, you'll have one person who's like Swiss Army knife. You'll have that in sales. You'll have that in even when writing code. I think it's not like companies will suddenly collapse into having no people, but the number of people companies hire will surely reduce.
But
right?
what happens to those 30 people who are working below that one person, right? I mean, they've all sort of suddenly become jobless. I take your point. I mean, why would I pay someone 40,000 rupees per month if I could just do it in sort of $5 or $10 per month? I get that entirely. But before we run out of time, I want to squeeze in one question on 11 Labs because it's very interesting, right? I mean, this whole text-to-speech thing. You don't need to be there if you want to do a podcast anymore. I mean, your voice modulation could just do it for you until the end of time. So just explain to us, if you can give us a short demo for people who don't know about 11 Labs yet.
Sure. So 11 Labs is very simple. There are lots of open source versions of this as well. There's one called Tortoise TTS. You give this tool a lot of samples of the voice that you want to clone, right? And then finally you type in text. Right? Once it's trained on your voice, or rather, it's also doing a fine tune on your voice. Then you say, well, say this statement, right? The flowers in New York City are beautiful. And then it will say those words in the voice of the person that you trained it on with the nuances of like ums, buts, pauses, etc. Right? So it's a beautiful tool. Let's show you a sample.
Sure.
Let's bring up a sample on screen.
So who are we cloning today?
You tell me. Let's play it and let's see what the sample's like.
Anyone? I mean, that's Jeff Bezos?
An AI application that can help you automate and optimize your business processes, generate test cases, debug code, and even generate new business ideas. In this article, we will explore how you can set up and use AutoGPT to streamline your business operations and maximize your productivity.
Thanks.
Okay, got that.
Yeah, that was not real. So I wish it was, but that was not real. So I no longer believe phone call recordings, for example.
Oh, that was not Jeff Bezos.
No, that was not Jeff. It was, let's just call it a copy of Jeff, right?
Wow.
Or let's just say it's the AI version of Jeff's voice. And we're able to make him say anything. Now, where's the gray area? What can we do? What can't we do? No, none of these rules are written down, right? So right now it's absolute chaos. Most people are, running YouTube channels with Jeff's face, Elon's face, their voices, and running scams. That's what it's being used for. But eventually somebody's going to find great use cases for it.
So, I have a query, right? I mean, there are of course a lot of these AI platforms that help you with your investments as well by giving you data, research. There's Perplexity AI that you were talking about earlier. But how are these different from regular chatbots?
Yeah, so I think compared to ChatGPT, Perplexity AI does two things. And we can bring up Perplexity on screen, please. So Perplexity can do two things, right? A, it can scout the internet. Now, ChatGPT can also scout the internet, but Perplexity is weighted on some different kinds of, for example, it's weighted heavily on PubMed. It's weighted heavily on Wikipedia, right? It's forced into sort of the directions of, let's say, more intellectual sources. And then Perplexity also gives you sources, right? So if it's giving you like a piece of text saying, well, this happened last week, here's a source. Well, this happened the other week, here's a source, right? Sometimes ChatGPT can tend to hallucinate. Right? ChatGPT can like I said, right? Like
it's not a real person, you know that, right?
It's not a real person, right? But you know what? To give ChatGPT credit, real people hallucinate all the time, right? Or they talk nonsense all the time. They've just learned the wrong pattern, so they think that it's the right pattern.
Okay, so can you do a prompt for me? Like, I mean,
sure.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about.
Let's talk about the keto diet. A lot of people have been very interested in the keto diet. Let's ask Perplexity, what are the dangers of a keto diet?
But that's something that even Google will give you, right?
Yeah, but Perplexity will give you a script that you as a YouTuber or creator can go now read on screen. Right? Obviously, and Perplexity also gives you these follow-up questions. So you can get very nuanced about it. We're like, well, with the keto diet, 50 fats per day or 50 grams of fats per day, is that too much? So you can ask very micro-specific questions, and it's not going to be SEO content. On Google, the problem is the top, let's say, 5 links are just going to be people that have just won the click war.
Okay.
Whereas Perplexity goes towards better intellectual sources.
Oh, wow. There's a complete meal plan also if you're interested in the keto diet and the macronutrient ratio. Okay, I guess, you've sort of convinced all of us about these AI tools and how it's not just a buzzword, but it could be a mega trend and all of us need to jump on the bandwagon. Varun, we have to take this to another episode. We've run out of time here, but thank you so much for joining in and being a part of Smart Money. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay, folks, with that, it is curtains down on this edition of Smart Money. We love receiving feedback from you, so keep writing into us. Thanks a lot for watching.